Welcome everybody. Today's class is dedicated by Dina Dornbush with a blessing and a prayer for Matir Asurim for the release and liberation of all of our hostages. Amen. Thank you very, very much. Next week there will be a class, Be'ezer Hashem, and the week afterwards, Tuesday is Tisha B'Av, so there won't be a class, and a few weeks there'll be a break after that. So next week will still be a class. Okay, you have a source sheet, one source sheet. If you didn't get it, it should be on the bima. We're going to explore something that at the surface would seem not so relevant, and even if relevant, certainly not so dramatic, and even if dramatic, not that dramatic, or cataclysmic, or so impactful. Something that at the surface would seem quite, I would say, maybe anticlimactic, if that's the proper word. Everybody knows what anticlimactic means? Okay. And yet, upon a deeper reflection, a whole new layer of interpretation emerges, and we come to see and discover a tapestry that it's easy to miss. And furthermore, one with profound meaning and relevance all the way to this very age and to this very time. This week, we conclude Sefer Bamidbar. It's the fourth book of Chumash. Bereishis, Shmois, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim, or in the English name, it's Genesis and Numbers and Leviticus. Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. This week we finish Sefer Bamidbar. In many ways, you could say that Sefer Bamidbar is really the conclusion of Torah to a certain degree, because Sefer Dvarim, the fifth book, is called Mishnah Torah, which means a repetition of Torah. And the reason is because all of Sefer Dvarim does not record any events. It records a speech. The whole Sefer Dvarim is a speech, essentially. It's not a story, it's not things that happen. It's a speech. That's what the word Dvarim means. Dvarim means words. It opens up with the verse, Eila hadvarim asher diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. And this is basically the final will and testament, if you wish, of Moshe Rabbeinu, who in the last 5 weeks of his life speaks to the Jewish people. He shares with them their history, their story, their narrative, their high moments, their low moments, lessons, mitzvahs, their journey, their destination, their purpose, their meaning. That's the entire Sefer Dvarim, all the way till the end, where he blesses them, and then the last 8 verses, his passing, and the Torah's eulogy. So essentially, the end of the Torah's stories is Sefer Bamidbar, the 4 books. Within Sefer Dvarim, Sefer Bamidbar itself, the last 2 portions read this week are Matos and Masei. Masei is a record of the journeys. It's like a chronicle of the 42 journeys that the Jewish people took in the desert from when they left Egypt until they came to the cusp, until they came to the border of the promised land. They went through 42 destinations called the Bais, the 42 journeys. And the last portion of Bamidbar records those journeys. Eila Masei, these are the journeys, and it goes through every location. They traveled from Egypt and they came here. They traveled from this place and they came here. They traveled from this place, they came here. 42 locations until the end. And then there is Hashem sharing with Moshe how the land of Israel should be given to the Jewish people, its borders, who should bequeath them the land, who should be in charge on dividing the land, and a few other mitzvahs connected with cities of refuge to somebody who kills by mistake. And then at the end, the story of the daughters of Tzlafchad, who inherited land from their father, and what how in terms of their plot remaining within the tribe, because and how they get married to people from Menashe. So that's Masei, which is really the last leg of the Torah, recording the actual journeys and a few mitzvahs connected to the land of Israel. Where does the actual Torah end in many ways? At the end of Parshas Matos. The end of Parshas Matos, that's where the stories of the Torah end. As I said, the whole book of Dvarim is a speech of Moshe Rabbeinu, And Masei is a recount of the journeys and a few mitzvahs connected to their future settlement in the land of Israel. So essentially, what we're happening here is when we come to the end of Matos, that's where the actual stories of the Torah ends. The end of Parshas Matos, which is the second to the last portion of Bamidbar. We would then expect that the end of all the stories of the Torah maybe should end like, what do they say? End with a bang. We would anticipate the final story of Torah, the crescendo, the zenith, the end of it all, to teach us something profound, meaningful, relevant. When you look at it at the surface, the end of Matos, which as I said is the conclusion of all the stories of the Torah basically, is anticlimactic. And I want you to take a look how the portion of Matos ends. Basically, the Jewish people are on a long journey. They still did not get into the land. They're on the eastern side of the land of Israel, today's Jordan. It's called Transjordan, the other side of the Jordan River, which means the eastern side, where today you have the country of Jordan. That's where the Jewish people are. That area, that region. Over there are two kings who come out to fight them and destroy them. You have Og, you have Sichon, and you have Og. They come, they want to liquidate, they want to annihilate the Jewish people in their entirety, men, women, and children. The Jews fight back and defeat Sichon and Og, which is now open territory. And there are 2.5 tribes of the Jewish people who decide that they would love to live there. Gad and Reuven, and ultimately a half a tribe of Manasseh, and they will settle there. They will settle on the eastern side of the Jordan, which will remain Jewish cities and countries for a very, very long time. This is on the eastern side of Eretz Yisrael, although most of the tribes will go into the western side of the Jordan and settle the other side of the Jordan, what's called the West Bank, the Ma'ariv, the western side of the Jordan River. The end of Matos describes now how that land on the east was taken and divided. And these are the last verses you could see. Vayelchu b'nei Machir ben Menashe Gilada vayilkeduha. The children of a man named Machir, who was the son of Menashe. Now Menashe, we know, of course, was a son of Yosef. Yosef had 2 sons, Ephraim and Menashe. So Menashe has a son, Machir. So again, we have Yaakov, who has a son Yosef, who has a son Menashe, and Menashe has a son Machir. And the children of Machir, the son of Menashe, go to a place called Gilad. Gilad is a very, very beautiful region. We know exactly where it is. It's in today's Jordan. Really beautiful, with a lot of streams, lakes, rivers. Very pastoral, very good for grazing and flock, which is why they settled there. Vayil Kedua, and they conquered Gilad. Okay. They expelled the Amorites who were still there, and they conquered this place called Gilad. And Moshe indeed gave this land called Gilad to this man named Machir, or his family, the family of Machir, the son of Menashe, and that family settled over there. V'Yair ben Menashe. Yair, a man named Yair, from the tribe of Menashe, the son of Menashe. Doesn't mean he was a direct son of Menashe. This is, remember that Yosef has died before the exile of Egypt. This is a few hundred years later. They were in Egypt for 210 years. But Yair from the tribe of Menashe, halach, he goes, vayilked es Chaveseyim, and he captures all the towns. Chaveseyim means all the towns around Gilad. Vayikre Esen, and he gives them a name, Chavos Yair. The towns of Yair. Basically, he names them after himself. His name is Yair. He calls all these towns around Gilad Chavos Yair, the towns of Yair. Rashi said he didn't have any children, and therefore this was his legacy, so he called it Chavos Yair. V'Noivach, a man named Noivach, halach, he went vayilked es Knos ves b'neseh, and he conquered a place called Knos, and its daughters, its offspring, meaning its towns around. Vayikra la Noivach b'shmai, and he named her also the name Noivach by his own name. And that's the end of Parshas Matos. That's the story. So basically we hear about these obscure people who go and conquer these Amorite lands called Gilad, the towns around Gilad, Knos, the towns around Knos. We hear about somebody named Yair from the tribe of Menashe, and he goes and he takes all the towns around Gilad. So these are facts that happened. These are stories that happened. And the fact that Yair conquered all the towns around Gilad, I guess, is essential for us to know. That's why the Torah wants us to know. But nonetheless, to think about that this is the last story, this is the end of the Torah. As I said, Monsey is the journeys and Dvarim is the speech of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the question is, why is this the conclusion of all the stories of the Torah? Who really cares about it? What is its relevance? What does it teach us? Why do we need to know it? And we know it with all of these intricacies, with all of these details. Anyone who studies Torah, Tanakh, knows that it's a book of great, profound, and quite dramatic events. If you go back to Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis, every story deals with huge ideas and stories and events with cataclysmic, with tremendous implications and results. You go to Sefer Bereshis, literally story after story. The story of creation, and the story of the first betrayal, and the story of sin, and the story of a snake, and the story of a brother killing his brother, etc. The corruption that happens, the flood, the tower. Every story is a story that describes the struggles, the triumphs of the human condition. Each story, no exception. Each one contains a major lesson for the story of humanity in one way or another. And yet, as we reach the end, we come to Matos, the end of all the stories, the final story. At the surface, it seems insignificant, random, and seemingly no implications. Okay, so this guy Yair went, and he conquered a bunch of towns, and he decided to call it by his name, Chavos Yair. But as I said, that's at the surface. If you would compare this story to the story of Yosef being sold by his brothers, or Cain killing Hevel, or Esav wanting to kill Yaakov, or Yishmael being expelled from the home, etc., etc., it would seem that this pales in comparison in terms of significance and relevance. It's just facts. It's almost like just, Jewish trivia about who went where and what did they conquer. And in order to appreciate this, we're going to focus on a little detail that seems like an anomaly, but it's fascinating. In Torah, every little detail opens up vistas to much larger stories. There's no small detail. At the surface, it's small, but it's not small. And that becomes a technical issue with lineage. Here it says clearly, Yair ben Menashe. Yair came from the tribe of Menashe. He was a son of Menashe. We know with tribes, Jewish identity is based on the mother, the maternal lineage. But which tribe you are is based on the father. A Kayin is based on the fact that his father is a Kayin, etc. So if my father is from the tribe of Levi, I'm from Levi. If my father is from the tribe of Yehuda, I'm from Yehuda. So Yair, it says clearly, is Yair ben Menashe. He's from the tribe of Menashe. There's a book in Tanakh called Divrei Hayamim, the book of Chronicles. Over there we have the story of Yair, but there's a completely different story in terms of where he comes from. And it's very rare to have such a blatant contradiction in Tanakh about the same person. If he comes from one tribe or another tribe, you will really have it, because this is like a real contradiction of fact. It's like either he was this family or that family. So if you take a look, your second source, Divrei Hayamim Aleph Perek Bais. This is Chronicles 1. This Chronicles 1 and 2. Chronicles 1, chapter 2. It's referring to the lineage of Yaakov and Yehuda. Yaakov, our third patriarch, had a son, Yehuda, Judah. Yehuda had three sons, Er, Oinon, Shelah. Er and Oinon died. They married a woman named Tamar. They both died prematurely. And then Shelah was left. Tamar wanted to marry Shelah. Yehuda didn't want Tamar to marry Shelah. Everybody knows the story. And Tamar disguised herself. And she was together with Yehuda. And the Divrei Hayam says, V'tamar kalasa yodelayas Peretz v'Zarach. And they had birth together. That she gave birth to twins. Peretz and Zarach. Their father was Yehuda. Their mother was Tamar. Kol bnei Yehuda chamisha. So Yehuda has 5 sons. Er, Oinon, who died prematurely. Shelah. And then Peretz and Zarach. Fine, beautiful. Bnei Peretz, who are the children of Peretz, the grandchildren of Yehuda. So we have Chetzron and Chamel. Okay, beautiful. Achar ba Chetzron. Chetzron needs to get married, right? His mother said it's time to get married. Ba Chetzron al bas Machir avi Gilad. So Chetzron comes and he gets married to a woman. She's the daughter of Machir. Machir, remember, is the son of Menashe. He's the father of Gilad. Machir has a son, Gilad. V'hu lekacha. And Chetzron, who was the son of Peretz, who was the son of Yehuda, marries this woman, the daughter of Machir. Who ben Shishim Shani, he's 60 years old. Vatelid lo Zguv, and she gives birth to a boy named Zguv. No, don't get too confused there. I'll just clarify. Okay. But you're going to be tested on all the facts. But it's not so complicated. There's a man named Yehuda. He has a son Peretz. Peretz has a son Chetzron. Right. Chetzron needs to get married. Like every good Jewish boy is told, as you tell your sons, the right time you got to get married. So Chetzron finds a wonderful woman. Who is this woman? She is from the tribe of Menashe. She is the daughter of a man named Machir, who happens to be the son of Menashe. Machir is the father of Gilad, so she's a sister of Gilad. And she marries this man Chetzron, and she gives birth to a boy named Zguv. Okay, beautiful. So Zguv's father is Chetzron, whose grandfather is Peretz, whose great-grandfather is Yehuda. And Zguv's mother is the daughter of Machir, the daughter of Menashe. Uzguv hoiled es Yair. And Zguv gave birth to a man named Yair, Vahila Yetzim V'Sholosh Arim Beretz HaGilad. And he had 23 cities in the land of Gilad. So if Yair was a son of Zguv, who was a son of Chetzron, who was a son of Peretz, who was a son of Yehuda, which tribe was he from? Yehuda. He wasn't from the tribe of Menashe. It's true, his grandmother was from the tribe of Menashe. That's true. His grandmother, because Chetzron married the daughter of Machir, who was the son of Menashe, so she was a granddaughter of Menashe, and she gave birth to a boy named Zguv, and Zguv was the father of Yair. So Yair's grandmother, right, his father's mommy, his father's mother came from the tribe of Menashe. But it's clear that his father's father, grandfather, great-grandfather, this is as Judean as it gets, pun intended. So we have here a very blatant contradiction. In our Chumash, you say, well, who cares? He was connected to Menashe. He was invited to Menashe's Hanukkah parties. Okay, perhaps it was his grandmother. But why would you say he's Ben Menashe from the tribe of Menashe? It really did not work that way. The Torah clearly says that when it comes to the tribes, it follows the father's lineage. So this seems like just, a little contradiction between Parshas Matos and Divrei Hayamim. But it's these little contradictions that I told you that open up vistas to profound reflections. And the class today is credited to a friend of mine, an older colleague of mine whose name is Rabbi David Foreman from the Five Towns, who has the website alefbeta.com on Chumash and Tanakh, and many works also on Chumash and Tanakh. And this is an insight I heard from him. I'm just going to develop it a little bit, but the insight is his. Really undigging, I would say. It's a work of archaeology, textual archaeology, of excavating deeper themes in the text. And the whole Chumash the whole Tanakh is so multi-layered that literally every verse, every story, you can dig up deeper and deeper dimensions. Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soid. And it's a work of intellectual and spiritual archaeology. So I credit him, and I want to attribute credit for the main theme of this class, and a few additions that I'm going to give just with some explanations from some other sources as well. In order to see the picture, and then realize that maybe the end of Matos is not as anticlimactic as we would think it is, but perhaps it's indeed a good summation of the Torah. We need to go in a little bit to discover this name of this place. Which country, what's the name of the place that was conquered by the children of Machir, the son of Menashe? The ample answer is Gilad. The place is called Gilad. And Yair from Menashe conquers the Chavoiseim, the towns around Gilad. So we're focused on a place called Gilad. So we think, did we ever hear about Gilad before in Chumash? The truth is, the name Gilad is mentioned dozens and dozens and dozens of times in Tanakh because it became a flourishing Jewish community since this conquest and settlement. Although today it's in Jordan, but for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years it was a blossoming Jewish community. But the question is, where did we hear Gilad the first time? So we have Gilad in terms of names, because as I said, Menashe had a son Machir, and Machir had a son Gilad, but that's in terms of people. In terms of countries, locations, did we have Gilad before? The first time we come across Gilad takes us indeed back to Bereshis. And as we will come to discover today, I just have no better way of saying it, Gilad has a lot of ghosts. There's a lot of ghosts associated with Gilad. I know maybe there's a better term for it, but Gilad has a lot of darkness or secrecy or mystery, pain, anguish associated with it. Eliyahu is called Hagiladi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu HaTishbe, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Yirmiyahu speaks about the fact, we read it on Tisha B'Av, Hatzari Ein Begilad. We can't find any more doctors and medicine in Gilad. So Gilad became a center, thriving center of Jewish life on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Where's the first time we meet Gilad? The answer is we go back to Bereshis, Genesis, Parshas Vayetze. It's the story of Yaakov spending 20 years with his father-in-law Lavan, and after 20 years escaping the home. He consults his wife Rachel and Leah, and they say, we have nothing left here, we can go. And Yaakov one day takes his entire family, meaning Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, all of the children who are still quite young, and they make what's called a vayivrach. They flee. They flee from a place called Haran. That's where Lavan, of course, lived, and that's where Yaakov lived for 20 years. That's where he built the entire family, the first family of the Jewish people. 11 of the 12 tribes were born in Haran, and we still know where Haran is. It's called today Haran. It's the ancient city, Hran, southern Turkey, northern Iraq. And Yaakov escapes, and he begins a journey back to his parents. His parents, of course, are living in Hebron in Eretz Yisrael. Lavan discovers 3 days later that Yaakov escaped, and he pursues him. He chases after him. Where do they meet up? Anybody remembers? Very good. Gilad. That's where Gilad is introduced the first time. And what happens there is a painful scene. Now, I just have to make a disclaimer. We're going to be discussing a lot of painful stories today, and each one of them deserves a whole series of classes. Why, and what's the meaning, and what's the significance, and it seems unfair. And these are very powerful questions that we're not going to address in this class simply because, first because a lot of that I don't know, and another reason is because of our time limits. So I know I'm going to be opening up a lot of stories that are difficult to understand, but I just want to focus on one theme. We can't always cover everything. And Be'ezer Hashem, in the right time, if Hashem allows me and us to be channels, we'll get to those as well, at least to the best of our human limited abilities, which is what we have. So if you take a look in your source, it's your next source. Let's just see a few of the major verses here. This is Vayetze Lamed Aleph, that's Genesis chapter 31. Lavan halach ligzei zis. Lavan went a few days away to share his flock. Vatignev Rachel es hatrofim asher lahavia. Rachel goes and steals the trofim that belonged to her father. The Chumash does not say what these trofim are. And the commentators, of course, have a huge debate. What are these trofim? They're mentioned in Tanakh again. Later we'll have a story that Michal, the daughter of Shaul, needed to save her husband David, who her father wanted to kill, and he ran away in the middle of the night, and the guards came to search for him, and she put trofim in his bed. So what are trofim? What is it that she had in her house? She put trofim in his bed, and this camouflaged the situation, and the guards came, and they thought he was sleeping, and they thought he's still there, and they could just protect him from outside. Later they find out he was gone. We have other mentions of trofim. So it's not clear what trofim are. Rashi says, and this is the interpretation in many commentators, it even says in Zohar, that trofim was a form of Avodah Zarah. This was some type of statue or idol that Lavan worshipped, and later Lavan is going to tell Yaakov, you stole my God. So obviously he referred to it as his God, as his deity. The Medrash actually says that all of his grandchildren were there, and they said, Zaidi, we are quite embarrassed with you that this is your God. That's what the Medrash says. Baishna, we're quite humiliated that our grandfather really calls these a God. So obviously these trofim were not just interesting, but they were extremely significant to the point that he could call them his God. The Ramban compares it to something that we would call today a horoscope. It was like a form of a clock that measured hours, but he used it as a horoscope. Others say that it was some instrument that he felt can prophesize to him and predict to him the future. There's so many different interpretations what Trofim are, but there's something that happens here, and Rachel decides to steal these Trofim. Yaakov steals the heart of Lavan. He doesn't tell him that he's escaping. It's a very harsh term. Yaakov steals his heart. What does it mean he steals his heart? He basically deceives Lavan because he doesn't tell him the truth. Yaakov escapes with everything. He crosses the river. And his face is heading to Mount Gilad. Lavan pursues him. It takes 3 days. Lavan catches up to that place. And then Lavan starts screaming at him. Why did you run away? Why are you stealing things from me? Why are you hiding? Why couldn't you be open about it? I would have sent you away with music. I would have sent you away with a concert. You didn't even allow me to kiss my daughters goodbye. You didn't allow me to kiss my grandchildren goodbye. Why are you doing this? And after everything said, why did you steal my God? And that's when Yaakov famously says, I didn't think you would allow me to leave, so therefore I ran. And in terms of your God, I never stole your God. And I don't know who stole your God. And he says these words, if you find somebody stole your God, if you find your God with one of my people, that person shouldn't live. In front of all our brothers, you recognize, you tell me what I have from you. You tell me what I have stolen. I have stolen nothing. Take it back. The Torah is now giving its own interpretation, drifting off the story. Yaakov, of course, did not know what really happened. He did not know that Rachel stole them, because he probably would have certainly never said these words. Whoever stole your God should not live. Rachel did take them. She placed them under the saddle, or in the pillow on the camel, and she was sitting on them. Lavan goes and he searches everywhere. He searches in her tent, he searches Leah's tent, he comes back to the other women, he goes to Rachel's tent. And then he comes to the camel. And what does she say to him? She says to her father, Pasuk Lamed, don't be upset, I cannot stand up for you, ki derech nashim li, because I am in the situation of a woman's nature, and therefore I can't stand up. And he searches and he can't find the Trofim. So basically, Rachel excuses herself for not standing up because she's not in that situation that she could. It would be disrespectful to her and her father, and therefore the Trofim remain hidden under her seat in the camel. Lavan couldn't find anything. It seems that Yaakov was right. Lavan was suspecting them innocently. And that's when Yaakov begins for the first time in 20 years sharing with Lavan what he really feels about him. How it was impossible to have him as a father-in-law. Sometimes it takes 20 years, and then when it comes out, it comes out. Did it ever happen to any of you? When it comes out, right? So Yaakov was quiet for 20 years, but after 20 years, as they say, Gilad. And Yaakov's words, Yaakov does not mince any words with Lavan, and the Torah feels it's important. And Yaakov bursts out and he says, why do you see me as a criminal? What is my sin? Why are you chasing me? You see that nobody took anything. You see that nobody stole anything. And then he says in Lamed Ches, very moving words, 20 years I'm with you. Not one of your sheep or goats have ever had a miscarriage. Richelecha are ewes, sheep. Eizecha are goats. Loishikelu, nobody had a miscarriage. I never ate any of your rams, any of your flock. I never came to you with a torn animal, with a sick animal that was devoured, and say, oh look, here's a sick animal. I made up for it. If there was an animal that was devoured, if there was an animal that was sick, I gave it to you. You came back to me. Could have been stolen by day, stolen by night. I took accountability. You never lost one animal from me. By day, I was consumed by scorching heat. At night, I was consumed by ice, by frostbite. I did not sleep for 20 years. 20 years in your house. I worked for you, for both of your daughters, and then another 6 years for your sheep. and you deceived me 100 times in wages. 100 times you deceived me. If not for my God, I would have been left with nothing. I would have been sent away completely impoverished. That's Yaakov's very impassioned, decisive, and unambiguous presentation to Lavan. Lavan, of course, as Lavan always does, it's called a machzach neshvissendik. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. These daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. These flock are my flock. Whatever you see is mine. I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing belongs to you. It's all mine. But you know what? Let's make a covenant. Let's make a covenant, and this will be a witness between us. And as the Torah continues here, you could see, Memhei vayikach Yaakov even v'yirmei matzeva. Yaakov takes a stone as a monument. Yaakov says, let's gather stones. They take stones and they make a gal. A gal is a mound, a mountain. They eat there. Lavan has a name, Yigar Sa'adusa. Yaakov has a different name, Gal Eid. Lavan says, this gal is a mound, a mountain of stones. It's called a gal. This mound of stones, this monument is a monument. It's a testimony. It's a witness. And that's why the name became Gal Eid. Gal Eid is a combination of two words in Hebrew. Aid means an aid, like aidis, a witness. Something or someone who testifies. That's what a witness is. And Gal is the mound of stones that Yaakov's people gathered. And Lavan says, this mound of stones, this little fortress of stones, this is what is going to be the witness between you and I about everything you have done and everything I have done and everything you will be doing in the future. Very mysterious story. And how does it end? Yaakov makes an offering, Vayikra le'echav lecha lechem, and he summons his brothers. It's interesting. Who were he? He didn't have brothers. He had a brother, Esav. His children here are called his brothers. He didn't have brothers. Yaakov had one brother, and this brother wanted to kill him many years ago. He wasn't here. So who are his brothers? His children and his entourage. Maybe his servants, people who worked with the family. But these are all called his brothers. Interesting. Why you would call your children your brothers? You ever call your children brothers? Hey brothers, it's dinner. Maybe they'll listen that way. You say, kids, Tati is calling you, Mommy is calling me. Brother, oh, okay. You know. I just thought about that, but I don't know. Vayoichlu lechem, they ate bread, vayalinu bahar, and they went to sleep by the mountain. Which mountain? Har Gilad. And the story continues. Yaakov now moves on, and ultimately he will end up by the river called Yabok, which is not far from Gilad. We know exactly where it is. He will cross that river with his family. He will go back, and that's when he'll have a mysterious battle in the middle of the night with a mysterious person. He will begin limping. He will get a name change. And then in the next scene, he's going to meet his brother Esav. They're going to embrace each other. Esav will go back to his country. Yaakov will go back to Eretz Yisrael. And the story continues. This is where Gilad, Gilad, is first introduced. Now, if we take a look in Rashi Vayetze, the next source, Lo Yichya. Remember Yaakov's words to Lavan. Inadvertently, he proclaimed a death sentence, or a curse of a death sentence, upon the person who stole the Trofim of Lavan. So Rashi says, Umei oisa klala meisa Rachel baderech. This tragically becomes fulfilled when Rachel dies at a very young age, traveling on the way back from Lavan towards Canaan. Of course, she gives birth to her second son, Binyamin, and she passes away shortly after that. Rashi calls it a klala. The source is Medrash, Bereshis Rabbi. You could see it's not Rashi's own interpretation. It's a type of a curse or a type of a death sentence, and that's how Rachel died. Now, obviously, whenever we learn about these things, there's a lot of mystery here, because obviously Rachel fulfilled her mission. This was part of Rachel's mission, but this is how it comes about. And all this happens where? It happens in a place called Gilad, which is a witness. This is a place of testimony. In fact, the word gal means a mountain. A wave is also called a gal because a wave goes up like a mountain, gal. But the word gal also comes from the word, what does gal mean? A wave, right? And what else? Huh? Right, gal, and revelation, right? Gal einai v'abita neflois m'teiresecha. Open my eyes. Gal is a place of gilui. Ligalot in Hebrew. What does ligalot mean? To reveal, to expose. Isn't that the job of a witness? The job of a witness is, right? They used to say, kill the witness, right? What does the mafia say? Kill the witness. Why? Because the witness is going to reveal that which we want should remain in closets. Ghosts live in closets, skeletons live in closets, demons live in closets. Opening the closet, gal, will be an aid. Right? One of the profoundest interpretations about history is the words of Yeshaya Hanavi. He speaks to the Jewish people in the name of Hashem, and he says, Atem Eidai, Ne'um Hashem. God says, you are my witnesses. You are my witnesses. You kill the witness when you want to hide the story. So when you want to get rid of God, who do you kill? Who do you persecute? Who do you hate? You're with the witness. And maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously. But there's no other way of rationally explaining thousands and thousands of years of Jew hatred, even in conditions which seemed completely not inviting such hatred. For example, Harvard University, or Columbia University, or MIT, or Yale, etc. So, Gal Eid is really very connected. Yes, Gal means a mountain of stones, a mound of stones. It also means to reveal. So this is a place where a lot of things are being revealed. Remember, Yaakov came to Lavan. Why? Because he ran away. Why did he run away? Because his brother was chasing him and wanted to kill him. Why did his brother want to kill him? Why? Because he took the blessings. How did he take the blessings? What is it called? Once again, he hid. He went into hiding. He hid. He camouflaged himself as Esav, and he took the blessings. Now again, it says Yaakov is again hiding. Vayignov. He once again stole. He deceived his father-in-law. And who else is involved? Now Rachel is also stealing something. Rachel is also killing Truffle. So however we understand the depth of all these stories, and each one of these stories is a whole other universe, but there's a theme that unfolds, and in Gilad, Lavan says, I don't know what's happening here, but all I know is I want God to be a witness, because I don't know what's happening here. Yaakov says, I'm innocent. Why are you suspecting me? And Lavan says, everything is mine, but I want God to be a witness for everything. I know that this story is not over. Let him be a witness for the past, and let him be a witness for the future. And Lavan says, I don't want you mistreating my daughters. I don't want you mistreating my grandchildren. Whatever happens, this is going to be a witness to everything that happens in your family. Everything. This is going to be the Gilad. He calls it Yigar Sadusa. Yaakov calls it Gilad. So Lavan is saying, this story is not over. How it's going to play out? Heaven knows. But this story is not over. In fact, some say that Rachel knew that those Truffim are very powerful, and Lavan sees a lot of things through them. And that's why she stole them, because she didn't want Lavan to know where Yaakov went. The Meshech Chachma, Rabbi Meir Simcha Ken of Dvinsk, gives a very interesting, very original interpretation. He says, Lavan really had a lot of spiritual sensitivities. Listen, he had a daughter Rachel, he had a daughter Leah, so that means their genes came from somewhere. You got to give him a little credit. The apple sometimes falls far from the tree, but it still comes from the tree. So if he had the daughter Rachel and Leah, the two matriarchs of the Jewish people, and in fact some say that Bilhah and Zilpah were also his daughters, so that means all the matriarchs of the Jewish people come from Lavan. So this guy Lavan, as a crook as he was, there was energy there. Like it says about Bilam, he was a great prophet on the level of Moshe, even though he distorted it and he misused it. The fact is that Lavan was also a grandson of Avram Avinu, a grandson of Avram's family, because he came from Psuel, who was a son of Nachor, was a son of Terach. So Avram was also his. They were all relatives. So the Meshech Chachma says that Rachel wanted actually that Lavan should have an experience of God. But we know that in Shmois it says Hashem told Moshe that he can only talk to him outside of Mitzrayim, because Mitzrayim was filled with paganism. So he couldn't speak to him over there. So Rachel took away the Trofim so that Lavan would be able to have an experience of the divine. And what happens that night? God comes to him in the dream. So Rachel actually wanted her father to have a divine experience. That's what the Meshech Chachma says. There's many different interpretations. Others say she wanted to take the Avodah Zarah away from her father. But how do you steal an Avodah Zarah from your father? You're just going to create a new one. If it's a god of that nature, you replace one god with another god. There may be also another interpretation that I once saw. It's really beyond the realm, but I just want to mention this. Rachel knew that Lavan may understand very well why Yaakov ran away. Her father was making him crazy. He was deceiving him. He wanted independence. He wanted to leave. He wanted to grow his family. He wanted to be able to build his own life. Lavan would have not allowed him to leave, so he left. Lavan could have understood that. And then he maybe would have not chased him. But because Yaakov stole, or someone stole the Trofim, his god, now he had to chase him. So Rachel essentially forced a confrontation between her husband and her father. There would have never been a confrontation. Yaakov would have never told him what's on his mind. He would have left and gone on to a new life. Was Rachel really helping her husband become the person he was supposed to become? Because Yaakov was a person who, when he's born, he's called Yaakov. Why is he called Yaakov? He's holding on to the heels of Esav. That's literally what he's doing. In other words, you name your child Yaakov. Imagine you name your son, and when somebody asks you, why do you name him this name Yaakov? Yaakov means a heel. Oh, because he was holding on to his brother's heel. What would a therapist say about the level of self-confidence you're giving this child? Not only were you named after your brother, you were named after the heel of your brother. That's great. It's not like you got your brother's name, Mela. You got the heel of your brother. Really? Ma, what were you thinking? What did your mother name you? Or your father name you? I deal with this because my name is Jacobson. Ben Yaakov. So I deal with this. So he's holding on to the heel of his brother. What does that say just from a psychological point of view without getting into the spiritual depth? I'm talking on a very, very basic, even mundane level. Rashi says he didn't want to let him go out. Like, I want to get ahead of you. So Esav represents this type of threat, and indeed Yaakov will buy off his birthright. And then Yaakov will take his blessings. And then Yaakov will run away. And now Yaakov is going to run away from Lavan. And what does Rachel say? No, you have to confront my father. You have to speak to my father. And heaven knows how emotionally difficult it is to confront people who have hurt you, especially after 20 years. Sometimes our greatest survival mechanism is to avoid. Our greatest survival mechanism, and for good reason, because a young child can't confront. So what do? All I can do is shield myself. All I can do is learn to be quiet. All I can do is to please. All I can do is smile. I'm now applying this to our own individual lives. Some people indeed respond one way, but some people respond in a very, very opposite way. And these are the mechanisms. And now when you tell this person, confront, it could sound like a death sentence, an emotional death sentence. Those of you who understand what I'm talking about know that if my brain developed a way of dealing with life by avoiding, by not confronting, by having that inner shame, it usually comes with a lot of self-blame. And what if I won't even be believed? And what if I'm going to be rebuffed? And what if it's going to happen again by the person denying it? This could be one of the most painful and difficult moments that I'm sharing with you, because I know a little bit about this parsha, unfortunately. Can feel like a death sentence for people. It could feel like an emotional murder, yet once again, because they're really confronting the deepest fear from which they had to run away their entire life. This touches the deepest levels of shame. This may be a deeper interpretation on a psychological level of Yaakov saying, stealing these trofim and confronting you is a form of death. Lo yichya. You want me to stand in front of you and confront you as a person, independent of you? This can be a death sentence, and Rachel pushes Yaakov into this moment. She forces him to confront Lavan. Of course, later, he's going to have to confront Esav once again. And the night before, he's going to have to confront himself. midnight when he meets that mysterious person. The Torah says there was nobody there but this mysterious man, because that person may have been inside of him. Sarei Shel Esav, the angel of Esav. And it's that moment that his name changes from Yaakov to Yisrael. Yaakov to Yisrael is a different name. Yaakov means I'm holding on to a heel. Yad Eikav. Yisrael comes from the word Li Rosh. You're a head, you're a leader. Yisrael is Ki Sarisa Im Elokim V'Manashim. You have fought with God and with men and you have prevailed. It's a whole different name. In fact, Rachel even knew what happened with their own marriage. Yaakov was supposed to marry Rachel. Her father deceived him. And he ended up marrying Leah. He came to Lavan and he said, why did you deceive me? But that was the end. Lavan said, because we don't marry off a younger sister before an older sister. And that was the end of conversation. And Yaakov married Leah. Yaakov married Rachel. And the story was never simple since then. And Rachel, if anybody knew about this, it was Rachel. And as a result of this, at this moment, something very, very intense happens. However we understand the full depth of the story, and there's so many layers even, I'm sure that we don't understand, obviously, Yaakov says to Lavan that whoever took these gods won't live. Lo yichya, should not live. But something else happens. It's not only Rachel who Yaakov loses. He almost loses both of her children. Yosef is sold by his brothers as a slave to Egypt. Binyamin is taken as a slave to the prime minister of Egypt. He almost loses Yosef and Binyamin too. So it's not only Rachel. It's almost that whole branch of the Jewish family is almost lost. It's fascinating. It's like it was almost this branch of the family was struggling to exist. Rachel passes away. Binyamin barely survived. He's born. Yosef is sold and he will almost disappear if not for crazy turn of events. And then Binyamin is taken as a slave and he may end up as a slave in Egypt if not for another crazy turn of events, which will happen throughout Parshas Vayeshev and Miketz and Vayigash, the end of Bereshis. These are the ghosts that live in Gilad. The place that reveals everything. The place where nothing is hidden. And let's face it, let's understand something. This is a painful thing I'm going to say, but it's also a very healing thing. Very often, in order to survive, we create secrets, consciously and unconsciously. Many families have secrets that nobody ever dealt with. Not because they're not good people, some are very good people, but it's almost like a generational secret that people don't even know, but it sits in the genes. And this creates all types of effects, positive, sometimes very positive things that we don't even know about that we bequeath in our genes. Emunah, Mesiras Nefesh, wisdom, love, depth, commitment, conviction. Remember, our genes are thousands of years old. We have the genes of Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, all these people, the Shvatim. Every Jew that lived, we're all children of. It's a large, intense, divine gene pool. But there's also other things. And sometimes there's toxicity. And sometimes there's pain. And sometimes there's secrets people, they know, but they also don't want to know. There was a Yid, he once said, we say, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha biyodim u'b'lo yodim. For the sin that we have done knowingly and unknowingly. So he said in Yiddish, biyodim u'b'lo yodim, meveist u'mamachtach nish wissendik. There's things we know, but we make believe we don't know. I once asked a Yid in Yiddish, say, was machst du, right? Was machst du means how are you? In English it means what are you making, yeah? Was machst du? So there was a chassid, he said, was machst du? He said, was kann schon a gemachte machen? What could someone who's made make already? Yeah. But someone else said, was machst du? He says, ich mach sich nicht wissendig. In Yiddish it's an expression, I make believe I don't know. So, was machst du? I'm making believe I don't know. It was such an interesting response. So often, for the sake of inner peace, delusional peace, but inner peace, we allow infections to fester. Why do we allow them to fester? Because confronting them is very, very hard. It's like if somebody chas v'shalom has a disease inside, they don't want to deal with it. Give me a Tylenol and I'll go to sleep. The same is true with psychological stuff and spiritual stuff and emotional stuff. And everybody knows it in their own life. It can fester and fester and fester until it explodes. And in many ways, when it explodes, the person is lucky because they have to confront it and they can cleanse themselves from it. So there's deep things that occur. And then there comes a time of gal aid. Gal aid means there's always a witness to truth. Nobody can hide truth forever. It doesn't exist. Truth cannot be hidden forever. It can be suppressed. It can be held down. It's like you're holding down something in the water. You're working very hard, and our brains do that. When you have something and you keep it down in the water, and the pressure is keep trying to come up, and no, push it down, push it down, push it down. This has been pushed down for so long. But truth prevails. Reality prevails. That's why it's called reality. It's real. Emes Hashem la'olam. Gal Eid means everything comes out. Everything gets revealed. In many ways, I think we're living in such a generation. The Navi says in Daniel that before Mashiach comes, Yisbareru, v'yislabnu, v'yitzarfu rabim. Things will become very clear. Things will become whitened from the word lavan, yislabnu, lavan, whitened. Things will become very conspicuous and ambiguous. Some people call it a curse. Really, it's a blessing. It's the only way you can go into redemption. Because how can I redeem myself from poison? How can I redeem myself from negativity if I'm not going to face it, if I'm not going to experience it? The way out of pain is sometimes through pain. I have to be able to experience it in order to get rid of it. When we're dealing with tzaddikim, we always have to have the respect and the awe and the reverence of talking about people with a very lofty level. In Yaakov Avinu's family, there was inherent and intrinsic a very, very deep split, a very deep hatred. That's why the brothers could sell Yosef. Yosef towards his brothers, the brothers towards Yosef. The split already begins earlier. Rachel, Leah. It really begins earlier in Yaakov's own identity and his own confrontation between Yaakov and Esav. We spoke about this in earlier years. Told us Vayetze. Kotzker Rebbe writes that you see in Parshas told us when Yaakov tells Yaakov to run away, she says, I'll bring you back when your brother stops being so angry at you, when you stop being so angry at your brother. So there was a very, very difficult situation on many deep levels. And although you're talking about great, great people, but here the way we apply it, Lavan is here addressing, and the word Lavan, like every name, comes from a very mystical source, comes from the word Loiven, which means whiteness, which means kasheleg yalbinu, when you cleanse things. Sometimes the Lavan in my life, who l'cha'ira deceived me, and the one who was changing everything in my life and shifted my trajectory 100 times, really comes to bring out who I really am, and me giving me the gift of facing whatever I have to face. And facing what you have to face means going from a place of Yaakov to a place of Yisrael. In fact, it says in Kabbalah that Rizal says Yaakov had two wives. He was supposed to marry Rachel, he ended up marrying Leah. And before this name shift, Rachel passes away. And he says the wife of Yaakov was Rachel, the wife of Yisrael was Leah. So there's two names, Yaakov and Yisrael, Rachel and Leah. The word Leah in Hebrew means exhausted. You know that. Leah is exhausted. Rachel means a sheep, a ewe. The gematria of Rachel is Vayhi 238. There was light. We spoke about this once. Rachel was the wife, the woman that Yaakov chooses naturally, organically. Leah is the wife that he discovers he got. In a marriage very often, and I know this is sensitive stuff, and I'm going to make a disclaimer, that everybody has to work on themselves. But in a marriage very often, you all know, there's the husband you chose, or you thought you chose, and there's the husband you ended up with. And it goes the other way around. If you'll ask your husband when he's drunk, he'll tell you there's the wife you date, and there's the wife you end up marrying. That's called Rachel and Leah. That's why we do a badekanish. Why do we cover the bride? You ever wondered, why do you cover the bride by the wedding? Shouldn't we uncover the bride so you see who you're marrying? Huh? You never thought about that. Exactly. The whole reason we do a badekanish is because Yaakov didn't see who he got married to. He married the wrong woman. So I would say at every Jewish wedding we should do an unbadekanish so we can make sure it's the right one. There's a very deep thing here. The badekanish is basically saying that what happened to Yaakov happens in every marriage. There's the part of you that I see and there's the part of you that I don't see. There's the part of you that I see, there's the part of you that I don't see. Not because I'm blind, I'm stupid, that could be too. But it's much deeper than that. Because that's what life is. Do I even know myself? How much percent of yourself do you really know? How much percent of yourself do you have access to? How much percent of ourself is hidden from our own perspective, never mind other people's perspective? It's a life journey of going deeper and uncovering everything. The good, the bad, the ugly. But mostly the good. Leah makes you exhausted. You know why? Because she makes you work on yourself. I have to confront things. Rachel is the spouse that Yaakov marries organically, of course. How do you not marry Rachel? She's beautiful. Yefei Toh, Yefei Mara. Leah, it says in Zohar, was Alma Diskasia. Leah represents the unconscious world, the hidden world. You get to the unconscious, you're dealing with very deep stuff, but that's the place where you know yourself. Now, relationships can exist on two levels. One relationship is more superficial, where people have a good marriage, but it's more superficial and it works. But their deepest inner self may not be in the relationship. We just don't go there. But once a person goes to a much deeper place, I have to work things out. And once I have to work things out, I have to face things. And that's where Gilad comes in. And the journey of the next of Sefer Bereshis is the Jewish family working things out, and in a very difficult way. And as is usual in Chumash, it's brutal too. It's like, it's not just in a therapist's office. It's brutal. And part of the family is almost amputated. Due to the family themselves, not from outer influence. Due to the family themselves. Now I'm going to go through the next piece fast, because it's going to be linguistic. But those who appreciate language, and Torah language, Hebrew language, will appreciate it. But I'm going to show you, and again, credit to Rabbi Foreman, how the stories in Bereshis that begin with Gilad, the same words are employed in the following stories, and it's the way of Torah showing the connection of all these stories. One of the principles of how we learn Torah, we say in the morning, B'shloish Esrei Midas, there's 13 ways how we interpret Torah. Kal v'chayim, the second one is Gzeirah Shava. Gzeirah Shava means when you find a word in one story and the same word is employed in another story, there's a connection. You say, what's the big deal? It's the same word. We assume that it's the divine origin of copy-paste. You know what copy-paste is? That's the concept of Gzeirah Shava. It's not just a word here. It was copied from here and pasted here. Copy-paste is not Bill Gates' Microsoft Chiddush. It comes from Gzeirah Shava. If you look in the next source, the second to the last source, this is the whole story of Yosef's sale. Yosef is sold. And I want to look at two psukim in the source of Vayetze, the third source on the page, and the second to the last source on the page. When Yaakov promises Lavan that the one who stole his tefillin would die, what is his language? Take a look, Pasuk Lamed Beis. Again, this is the fourth paragraph. Pasuk Lamed Beis, the line starts Hara Gilad. Im asher timtza es Elohecha lo yichya neged achenu haker lecha ma'imadi. Whoever you find your God with should not live. Recognize, search what is with me. What is with me that belongs to you? So his language is Asher Timtza, whomever is found your God should not live. Haker lecha. Do we ever hear these words later in the Torah? This combination, huh? Very good. Tamar will confront Yehuda. and say, Hakerna. But here we have another word, not only the word haker, but Yaakov says, whoever you will find your God with. Timtza. That combination of these two words, of course, these are the exact words with which the sale of Yosef was perpetrated. Take a look in that source in Vayeshev. And I want you to look in Pasuk Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Lamed Bais. Vayishalchu es k'soines hapasim vayaviu el aviyim. They took Yosef's tunic, they dipped it in blood. Vayomru, Zois matzanu, we found it. Hakerna. Can you recognize, is this your son's coat or not? Number one. Number two, look in the Pasuk Nun Daled, the last one of Vayetza. Vayizbach Yaakov zevach bahar vayikra le'echav lecha lachem. He called his brothers to eat bread. And I asked you, why are you calling your children brothers? Is there ever a time again that brothers will sit down to eat bread? Exactly. The first time we hear about brothers eating bread is right here by Lavan. When is the next only time brothers are sitting down to eating bread? And of course, if you'll take a look what happens right after the sale of Yosef, what happens is, it says the brothers sit down, vayeshvu lecha lechem. When Yaakov called his children to sit down and eat bread, it wasn't his children, these were brothers. Brothers who would eat bread when they sold their brother Yosef. Exactly the same story. When Yaakov comes to Rachel and says, hi Rachel, what's going on with the camel? And what happens? Rachel took the trophim, right? You remember she took the trophim, v'tasimim bechar hagomel. She put it in the pillow of the camel. So she took Rachel lokcha es hatrophim. The word trophim keeps on being used there, v'tasimim bechar hagomel. Now if we listen to the word trophim phonetically, not the meaning of the word, phonetically, what does it sound like? Forget how it's spelled a moment. Treifa, twice. Trophim is plural. Is there a plural trophim anywhere? Tarov, Taraf, Yosef. Tarov, Taraf, Yosef. Trophim. Yosef was devoured. That's how he describes what happened when he sees the coat that was dipped in blood. Tarov, Taraf, Yosef. Now Rachel takes the trophim, v'tasimim bechar hagomel. She puts it bechar hagomel. Bechar means in the pillow. But what else is bechar? Bais chaf reish. Bechar, the oldest. She takes these trophim, batasimim bechar. She puts it, the oldest. Who is her oldest? So she placed her oldest son on the top of that camel. Batasimim bechar hagomel. Did she take her oldest son and put him on top of that camel? Indeed, indeed. Take a look, Pasuk Chaf Hey, in your second to the last source. They throw him into a pit. Vayeshvu lecha lechem, vayisu eineim vayiru v'hinei erchas Yishmaelim ba'a migilad. Whoa. There's a caravan of Yishmaelites coming from Gilad. Gilad? Ugmalehem! And their camels are carrying spices. And they lift up Yosef and they give him to the Yishmaelim. How was Yosef taken to Egypt? On what animal? On a camel, on a gumel, gmalim. Which also means reward, gumel, reciprocity, right? Ligmol, to give. What goes around comes around. What comes around goes around. So vatasimeim bechar hagomel. It's like she put her bchar, her oldest son Yosef is her bchar, Bais chaf on this camel. And what does she tell her father? Why can't she stand up? And she says, I can't. Why not? And we know the words kiderech nashimli. It's that time of the month I can't. What was she really saying? Father,
Wasn't she expecting him here? That's why? It was right before Binyamin was born.
Well, what she was saying was that it's the time of the month, Derech Nashim, that she can't because it's not going to be appropriate. That's what she said. However we interpret that, what did she mean with that? The Shalah says that Avodah Zarah is metame. So since she's sitting on Avodah Zarah, so she's tameh. That's what she meant. There's other interpretations, but that's what she said. So now let's think about this. What is she really saying? Father, forgive me, I can't get up because the way of woman is upon me. This is how she evades detection by her father. What she's really saying is, and I'm saying this simply to show you the synchronization here is, if I stand up, what are you going to see? You're going to see blood. That's what you're going to see. What do the brothers present Yaakov with? A tunic of blood. Yaakov is looking for Yosef. All you're going to find here is blood. Lavan is looking for his trufim. Rachel says, all you're going to find is, you're not going to find trufim, which is tarif, you're going to find blood. We have no idea where he is. Rachel says, I don't know where the trufim are. All I know is that there's blood. And the brothers say the same thing. We don't know where Yosef is. All we know is there's blood. Figure it out. Trufim, tarif, Yosef. He figures it out. And they're coming from Gilad. Somehow, this is the long, secret ghost of Gilad extending itself, trying to schlep Yosef away on the camel into Egypt, tear him away from Yaakov. Rachel is gone, and now Yosef is gone. Tarif Yosef. Rachel disappeared from Yaakov's grasp, and now Yosef disappeared from Yaakov's grasp. Don't worry, this class is not going to go on forever. It's going to come to a close. I know you want, but not. You're like, is he going to go through the whole Tanakh now? Yecheskel, Yirmiyah, Yeshaya, Amos, Tzvanya. I'm not a prophet. I just feel the energy. If you take a look at Yaakov explode, so to speak, bursting out, exploding, sharing his emotions with Lavan. He says to Lavan, and you can take a look again in Pasuk Lamed Ches, this is the fourth source, Ze esrim shana anochi imach richelecha v'izecha lo shikelu. What's richelecha v'izecha lo shikelu? 20 years I've been with you, and your sheep and goats have never miscarried. I did not eat your rams. Nothing ever disappeared. I shielded every animal from the predators. I was the one who brought it back if it was stolen by day or by night. And we look at these words and we ask, do we ever hear these words again? And of course, Richelecha. What does Richelecha remind us of? Rachel. What an interesting word. Your Rachel never miscarried. Wow. Rachel never miscarried. She was pregnant with Binyamin, and the labor would be very, very difficult. But she didn't miscarry. In fact, she gave birth, and she died instead of the child. If she would have miscarried, maybe she would have been alive. But Rachel gave birth. The baby survived, Binyamin. Rachel didn't survive. Treifa lo hevesi elecha. I never brought you a treifa. I never brought you a treifa. Those are the words Yaakov will use when he's presented with the bloody coat, tarif Yosef. And now he says, treifa lo hevesi elecha. I did not bring you a treifa. Anoichi achatena miyadi tevakshena. Take it from my hand. You take everything from me. I'm responsible. When do we hear this? And Yehuda, very good. Yehuda comes to Yaakov and says, the prime minister of Egypt will not let us get food if we don't bring Binyamin. And Yaakov says, I'm not letting Binyamin go. I lost my son Yosef already. And what does Yehuda say? Anoichi ervenu miyadi tevakshenu. You'll come demand him from me. I am the one responsible. Yehuda says, you can come claim him from me. He's echoing the words of his father. Yaakov says, Gnufsi yom, Gnufsi laila. It was stolen by day, it was stolen by night. Where else do we have a double ganev, a double theft, In Chumash again, who says it? Yosef in prison. Gunoiv gunafti me eretz ha'ivrim. Twice I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews. I was kidnapped. Everything Yaakov says to Lavan comes back in all of these stories. Rachel doesn't miscarry. I never brought a treifa to you. I was responsible for every animal. If it was stolen by day or stolen by night. Yosef is almost lost, and now we come to Binyamin. What happens to Binyamin? Binyamin comes down to Egypt. Yosef sees him, but on the way home, what does Yosef do? The prime minister, he hides his goblet in the bag. What happens then? He sends out a search to pursue them. And what do? The man starts searching. Who does he start with? The oldest one. He ends up in the youngest one. They open up Binyamin's sack. What do they find? The goblet. There's the Ganev. This is the Gavia, the goblet. What does Yosef say? What do I do with this goblet? This is how I predict things. This is how I know everything. These are my trofim, so to speak. And this Binyamin just stole them. And the brothers say, you're right. But we didn't steal anything. Before the search happened, we didn't take anything. Just like Yaakov, we didn't take anything. And they even tell him, you could look for the person who stole it, and if you find him, you can kill him. That's how certain they are that he's not going to find it. They didn't do anything. They didn't. Just like Yaakov didn't do anything. And indeed, the prime minister's man says, you're right. Whoever stole it, we won't kill him, but he'll be my slave, and you can go free. And of course, as you'll see in the last pasuk, Vayichapes bagadol heichel bakotin kila vayimotzei agviya b'amtachas Binyamin. They find it in Binyamin, and they take back Binyamin to be a permanent slave of the prime minister. And now they're going to come back to Yaakov. Yosef says, go back to Yaakov. Atem alu l'shalom alavichim. That's how Parshas Matos ends. And all is good. Binyamin stays here. And what is about to happen? Yaakov is about to lose his last child from Rachel. Yosef is gone. And now Binyamin is about to be gone. That's where the story is holding. And it's the only time in Chumash that a story is interrupted mid-sentence with this mystery suspense. Till today, even though I know the end of the story, I read it a couple of times, but till the end, when I get to the end of Matos, I'm like, come on, don't do this to me. I'm not waiting another week. I know the end of the story, but it's so gripping when the prime minister says, I have my prisoner, he's a thief, he'll be my slave. Atem alu l'shalom alavichem. Such beautiful words. Go back in peace to your father. You could be at peace. You didn't do this. In fact, the Medrash says they didn't know that this was a plot. They thought Binyamin really stole. And you know what they told Binyamin? What do you think good brothers tell a brother? They said, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mama knew how to steal, and you also know how to steal. Mama stole Zadie's trofim, and now you steal the prime minister's trofim. This is great genes that you guys have. Now, right? Classic Jewish response. You can almost hear them say it. You know what? That's what the Medrash says. You're just like your mother. Now, Binyamin never knew his mother. He grew up an orphan. She died when he was born. But they knew his mother. This was their aunt. They knew Rachel very well. They saw what happened over there with Lavan, and they probably knew that she stole it. If they figured it out or not, we're not sure. We should put it afterwards. And at this point, that moment of Gilad is about to materialize in the most tragic sense. Rachel passed away. Yosef has been gone for 22 years. From Yaakov's perspective, he has been mauled by a wild beast. And now Binyamin is about to be taken as a captive for good. A slave is a slave you stole. Indeed, the Gilad, somehow the split in the family, the unresolved tension in the family, the hatred, animosity, however we can explain it, however we need to explain it. But somehow, it's all coming out now. And it's like the story is over. And when Yosef, the prime minister, they don't know what Yosef says, go back in peace to your father. What does he mean in peace? V'atem alu l'shalom. How peaceful? And his point is, will you really be at peace? Will you really be at peace when one brother you sold into slavery and another brother you just allowed to become a slave? Will you go back in peace? Like, this is the ultimate profound test. How much shalom are you going to have? You'll go back to your father. Yaakov will say, where is Binyamin? And they're going to say, it's not our fault. Tati, we could save our brother if he's normal, if he behaves. He stole the prime minister's goblet. Tati, what are we supposed to do? Like you used to say, Mesiris Nefesh can help if you want to jump off a roof, but not to jump onto a roof. You can't jump onto a roof. You could jump off a roof. What are we supposed to do? The guy stole. What should we do? They don't know really what happened. He didn't steal. But they think he did. Why would they think the prime minister of Egypt put the goblet in Binyamin's back? That is what we could expect. And the prime minister says, go back in peace. You can be at peace. You have a family now. You finally got rid of Rachel, Yosef, and Binyamin exactly the way you wanted. Lavan's long hand of Gilad has come to an end. But that's not what happens. That's not what happens. And one of the most moving moments in Chumash, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches the prime minister of Egypt. He does not know who he's talking to. And he says, I cannot go back to my father. If my father sees that Binyamin is not here, v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, his soul is intertwined with his soul, he will not live. Eich elel aviv anarein enuiti. How can I go back to my father without a child? I can't go back to my father and say, he's a rotten kid, he stole, he's the black sheep in the family, just like Yosef was. We'll have a beautiful family without them. I cannot do that. These are inseparable from us. V'nafshay kshura b'nafshay. And then he tells the prime minister, I have a solution. I will be the slave. Let Binyamin go back to his father. I'll be fine. I'll be the slave. That's his solution. And what happens then? V'lo yochel Yosef li'sapik. Yosef can't control himself. Yosef can't contain himself. Why not? You contain yourself all this time. Of course, Yosef sees healing happened. The same man who said, take him out of the pit and sell him, Yehuda, is the man who now says for the second brother from Rachel, I'll be a slave instead of him. Let him go back to his father. Yosef reveals himself and he says two words, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef. That was enough. The story came to a conclusion. The family reunites. Yaakov has Yosef. Yaakov has Binyamin. They become an indispensable part of the Yud Beis Shvatim. It's not so simple. Binyamin soon, guts later, 100 years later, has a whole story, Pelegish Begiva. That's a whole new Maisa where Binyamin almost again gets torn away from the Jewish people. But at last, Yosef and Binyamin are reunited. So the same Yehuda saved these brothers 3 times. Reuven had him thrown into the pit because he wanted to save him. Well, he would have died in the pit. Yehuda wanted to sell him, but he got him out of the pit and he sold him. So he saved his life once. Then Yehuda saves Binyamin's life. And in the process, he brings back Yosef back to Yaakov. So Yehuda is the one who brings it all together. Now we go through Bereshis, we go through Shmois, we go through Vayikra, we go through Bamidbar. We come to the end of Torah, we come to the last story of Matos. And as I said before, that's really where the stories of Torah end, because Dvarim is the speech and Masei is the journeys of the Jewish people towards the land of Israel. So we now come to the last verses of Matos, and I said it seems a little anticlimactic for such a grand book, God's blueprint for life. This guy Yair is running around, conquering towns, giving it his own name. Okay, nice. Next. I don't see any great message here for us. Torah Miloshen Hayra, every story in Torah is a lesson. But indeed, we just have to remember that one word, Gilad. Gilad has since been lost to the Jewish people. It never really belonged to the Jews. It was where Lavan and Yaakov ate bread. It's where they made a covenant and then they moved on. Now they went to Egypt, all because of Yosef. They survived Egypt. They were liberated from Egypt. They stayed in the desert 40 years. There were only 2 spies that did not remain disloyal, that did not dissuade the Jews. And that was one tribe from Yehuda, Kalev, and the second tribe from Yosef, Yehoshua, was from Shevet Ephraim. 40 years later, Sichon comes to war. He's from Gilad. And now the Jews have access to Gilad. So this man named Yair, who calls himself Ben Menashe, from the tribe of Menashe, he goes and he conquers all these towns and he settles them. Who's Yair? We know Yair comes from Menashe. So it starts over the story of Bnei Machir, Ben Menashe. The children of Machir, the son of Menashe, conquer Gilad. Moshe gives it to Machir, and then Yair goes and conquers all the towns around. But 1 second. Yair belonged to Yehuda, not to Menashe. We just said, you remember the contradiction? In Divrei Hayamim, Yair's mother, Yair had a father, Zguv, and Zguv's mother came from Menashe. That's true. She was the daughter of Machir. That's what we learned in our second source. Chetzron was his Zayde, was from Yehuda, son of Peretz. Who is he? Is he from the tribe of Menashe, who was the son of Yosef? Is he from the tribe of Yehuda? And why would the Tanakh give us such a contradiction? But here is a final act of reconciliation. Centuries after Yehuda vanquished the ghost of Gilad by reuniting Yosef and Binyamin with the entire family and of course with their father Yaakov. A child of Yehuda, Yair was a grandson of Chetzron, the son of Peretz, the son of Yehuda. Captures Gilad. But now he doesn't only capture the demons of Gilad, he captures the territory itself called Gilad. One more time. But who does he do it on behalf? He comes from Yehuda, but who does he give it to? The tribe of Menashe, the son of Yosef. So here is somebody from Yehuda who adopts the identity of Menashe, not legally, but emotionally. And he conquers it not on behalf of Yehuda. Yehuda will settle the other side of the Jordan. He conquers it on behalf of Menashe. Yair ensures that Gilad will become part not only of the Jewish territory, but of whose territory? Yosef's territory. Because Menashe is the oldest son of Yosef. It will become part of the tribe of Menashe. His grandmother is a daughter of Machir ben Menashe. Why would Menashe name his son Machir? What does Machir sound like? Mechira. What does Mechira mean? Selling. What else? Mem Chaf Yud Resh. What's another word it makes up? Mechira. Makir. Hakir no. Makir. To recognize. When I sell you, do I recognize you? Very good. Thank you. When they come back to Egypt and they meet the prime minister, what does it say? Yosef recognized his brothers. Veheim lo hikiruhu. They did not recognize him. They never recognized him. So he names his son Menashe. From all the names in the world, he chooses the name Machir. Wow. And Machir has a son, and what does he name him? Gilad. We see in Parshas Pinchas, we see in Divrei Hayamim. Machir, what? Interesting. Why are you naming your son Gilad? Gilad is a place, I know that. Because of course, this is all the story of Gilad. This is all Gilad. So he names his son Gilad. Gilad has a sister. The sister also needs to get married. And somehow there's a shidduch between Tamar's grandson. And what happened to Tamar? Tamar wasn't supposed to marry Yehuda. Yehuda didn't recognize Yosef, and who else did he not recognize? His wife, his daughter-in-law. He thought it was someone else. It was Tamar. Tzaddik ka Tamar Yifrach. And the only one who's called a tzaddik in the Tanakh is Yosef. Yosef had tzaddik. Tzaddik ka Tamar Yifrach. And then Yehuda is like, OMG, not oh my Google. Oh my God, he finds out that he was with Tamar. And he was about to send her to the stake. You remember the story. Why? Because of promiscuity. It wasn't promiscuity. Remember, before Matan Torah, Yibum was also with a father-in-law, just like today it's with a brother-in-law if there's no children. So Tamar was completely legit. And he was ready to kill a woman with her pregnant twins. And then Yehuda said, wow, is it possible that I have a difficulty in recognizing people? Maybe if I made a mistake with Tamar, maybe I made another mistake many, many years ago with another brother. And that moment, Yehuda is completely transformed. That moment of humility, when I realize how I have to make a reckoning of my entire life. That moment when I see I was looking at things from such a narrow perspective. That's the moment of Hakara. There's a reason that Mashiach comes from Yehuda, because to trust a person with being the ruler of the world, it's only a person of such humility. because power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Only Yehuda who can come out and say, Tzatka, she's right, many, I'm the one who did this. And you can imagine the WhatsApps that went around that day. When Yehuda, the greatest of the king of all the Shvatim, came in and said, many, I'm the guy, I'm the culprit. Yehuda could have given an excuse. I forgot some tshuva in Shulchan Aruch, whatever. He could have given an excuse. So Menashe names his son Machir, the same name of the sale. And now Machir has a son, just like Machir has a son Gilad. Now Machir has descendants. Now comes a child, Yair. The word Yair means what? Light. That's similar to the word Gal Eid, bring things to light. Yair is the one who will bring things to light, but not only bring darkness to light, transform darkness into light. It's not only they remember what happened to Gilad. He goes back to Gilad. He goes back to the ghost. He goes back to that place and he wrestles it, so to speak, from the demon and transforms it through light. Because Yair understands that the secret of light is that it's rooted in infinity. And therefore it's not afraid of darkness. It can transform darkness. It can wrestle the darkness from itself and redefine it. Real healing is not just, I escape, I avoid. Maybe temporarily that's important. Real healing is that ability to know that your light is so powerful that even your darkness is really only a catalyst for your light. It's all your light. And therefore Yair will transform it, and he goes and he takes that Gilad and he brings light into it, and even though he's Yehuda, he conquers those villages. He calls it Chavos Yair. But it doesn't belong to Yehuda. It's going to Yosef. So the last action, the last story, the last action piece, so to speak. Again, the stories afterwards in Chumash are not actions that happened. They're either mitzvahs or conversations, like the daughters of Tzlafchad, like the mitzvahs in Monsey, or a recounting of the journeys. But the last piece of action of the 40 years of the Jewish people sojourning in the deserts ends with what? Brothers taking care of brothers. And with this moment of true graciousness and reconciliation, of authenticity, Yair at last helps to vanquish the ghosts of Gilad one last time. And then of course makes sense that we always read Matos during this time of the year. We finish Sefer Bamidbar Matos always during the 3 weeks, because it's the fighting of brothers that became the greatest source of Jewish destruction. That fighting of brothers. So we come and we read this story to remind us how brothers can take care of brothers, how brothers can stand up for brothers, how brothers can protect brothers, and how to make amends when we hurt our brothers and sisters and reveal the true light, which is always the light of oneness. Have a wonderful week.